Come to our Finance and Performance meeting on the 7th of December. I'm going to ask Councillor Pahuru Huriwai to open with Karakia for us. And just a final reminder, microphones.
Thank you, Your Worship. Namely, tata tēnei mātou, I koropipo nei ana I mō tuaroaro kia manaki tia mātou I roto I tēnei hui ngā. Kia putai ngā whakaaro I roto I te rangi Māori. Kia raku hōhunu anō hoki I roto I ngā kaupapa. Kia whaia te maramatanga. Koe nei tēnā kia koe I roto I te motu tamai Ngāti Aho.
Amine, thank you for that.
Asking for us to have brilliant thoughts today.
Good.
To wānanga deeply and to come up with some great decisions.
Fantastic. Okay, so as you can see today, we've got a chunky agenda to get through. We have got a tight time frame, like I said. We have some visitors today, and we will also conduct a hearing at the end of the day. We will listen to one submitter. So that is in regards to our pool fee setting, which we will make a decision on. So today we listen to the hearing. There's a lot of background reading and a decision will be made. I also welcome Nadine, who's on screen today. She is the proud mama whose son is graduating in Wellington today. Fantastic. So councillors, without further ado, I want to take you to our agenda. I do want to just acknowledge and give a shout out. There's a lot in today's agenda, a lot of new stuff for our new councillors. Please feel free to ask questions to our more senior councillors. Be patient. All of us are on a learning curve together. Like I said to you in our email, it took me a good 3 years to get my head around all of it. So please feel free to ask your questions. If it's not the appropriate place or the appropriate time, I'll make sure we get some training or the information you need, because in the end of the day, you make better decisions if you have all the information you need. Apologies. No apologies. Just tilt names, please, Tony, so I can see. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Okay, let's go to our governance work plan. It's just showing us what is done when. I have no leave of absence, no acknowledgements or tributes that people alerted me to. Public input and petitions, none of. Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, just on I know that there's nothing great for it. Here in the 6th of April. The other is we've got heaps in April. I'm just wondering whether
Very worship, just to say that that is this last year, so we actually haven't, so when it says forward, it probably should work when the actual program is going to occur. So when in the new year, you'll have the whole forward program of when we have in February and what the will be on the agenda at that particular one. But this is actually said, what have we done up to date?
Andy, can you just speak up so that we can check? Just speak up.
Can you hear me?
No, so Heather,
Despite
Andy's microphone is probably not working. So that this was last year's work, and the new one will be given to us in the new year.
okay, I've swapped microphones. Nadine, can you hear that? Cool.
Yep, all good. Okay, no extraordinary business, no notices of motion, no adjourned business. We move to our first report, which is on page 10. Why is it not? Oh, there it is. Let me just focus on the right. Let's all go to page 7, councillors. So this is a straightforward report. Pauline, do you want to give us the 30-second lowdown?
it will only be 30 seconds. This is just a simple extension of time to do simpler reporting with regards to the actual trust being a CCO, a council-controlled organisation. And so all of this is to say, yeah, we give that, has to be done by resolution to allow us to do that, and that allows us to not incur additional cost of reporting for a simplified mechanism of this trust.
Happy to move it, Your Honour.
Moved by councillor Robinson, seconded by councillor Foster
Just a question, where's the actual resolution?
on page 8. Councillor Telfer, you have a question?
Right, sorry.
Yeah, I just,
Microphone.
yes, probably just, this is probably more ignorance at this stage, but I'm just questioning, I'm just wanting to know this trust, relief trust, I see it hasn't actually been used, is that correct? So there's money been in there and it hasn't actually been used. I was just wanting to know, what is the difference between this trust, this money that's sitting there, and the mayoral relief fund? Is it necessary to have these two funds, or could they come under the one umbrella?
The two different ones, the Mayoral Relief Trust, Mayoral Relief Fund is central government funding, and that is applied and actually managed and overseen by the mayor to be able to give that out. The second parts of this is a charitable trust, and that is a vehicle to allow to receive donations to be made into this trust to be given out as it's needed. It hasn't been used, but it is a simple vehicle that can be then distributed with it. And what was interesting in a recent, with all of councils, they were saying when there are a mayoral relief trust, that would be good fund, when you have that as separate from a charitable organisation, it allows you to do more, and it allows you to separate it, but it also allows you to do that public funding and have a very good structure around it being audited if it is needed. So if you get an event, like we could do at any particular time, if you haven't got the set up, it takes a lot of time to be able to do it. So most of the funds is being given and granted by council for the setting it up, 120,000 of it.
Any other questions? Councillor Parata.
I'm still just trying to catch up with my notes. So just in terms of the disaster relief fund, how exactly do you apply for the, how do you access, how are the funds accessed, and have we put that out to the community to know how it is that they can access it and what the criteria is for that particular fund? I do understand that money hasn't yet been spent, but I just wanted to know how accessible is it to the community?
The first two parts of it, and part of the strategies when we had the additional funding from central government, which have totaled up to 220, was to use those funds first, because if you do not use it, you have to give it back. And so in terms of that process, that was applying for those, and it was allowed out into the public who needed it, and it was being assessed. If there was a shortfall, then those that are on the trust, the trustees that can actually make those decisions, which is the mayor and Councillor Tibble, to actually assess those individual applications. As yet, we haven't had anything separate because we still have the central government fundings to apply.
But we when we receive the mayoral relief fund, we actively push it on Facebook and let the communities know, and we try and use, or not try and use, it's oversubscribed, we use that money first. And then this, I don't know if you guys remember the lovely lady from Auckland who sent me $20 through the mail last year to go into this fund. So this fund is open that if, and I know our school have fundraised, Central School have fundraised as well. This gives the opportunity to the community as well. And then if we declare an emergency, we can then actively use from this fund as well. And Councillor Tibble and myself are on the little subcommittee that would then sit down with our recovery manager and work through the applications. Councillor Telfer.
Just a supplementary, really. how long has this fund been here, been operating?
It's stated 2008.
So to me, there's money sitting in that account, and I'm sure if it's 120,000 or whatever is there, surely that could really be used out in the community. So I'm really surprised that the money hasn't been accessed yet.
Bear in mind that this is for a vehicle in exceptional circumstances that not only can go for our community and to individual people, it can actually be made, if they so choose, to the trustees for anyone within New Zealand. So it is a vehicle to enable that to happen. And as it's mentioned, if you don't have this vehicle, it is very difficult to be able to collect public funds. That is done in very much in an audited way. That is open to scrutiny. So this allows that to do that. Those people that can donate to it then get the basis of having a donation deductibility. But I think James also
Mr.
wants to
Beattie,
add
would you
something.
like to add to that?
Yeah, just a brief comment. Often what you'll find when there's a need that arises, it's on the back of an event and the government will often step in first.
Yeah.
So that process, as has already been articulated, is that we would use the government funding first, as was the case with the March events. And we had a strategic approach to how those funds were used. So there was an MPI portion, which we needed to liaise with MPI on in terms of the spend. And that was all geared towards the primary sector. And then we had the NEMA funding, which we had more flexibility around, but we developed criteria for that. So I guess in part why this fund hasn't been used is because it would be the last cab of the rank would spend the government funding first. And if there's any overflow required, then we can direct people to this fund to cover any shortfalls. So when we've had events in the past, that's often been the pattern that's followed.
Kia ora. It's been seconded already by Councillor Foster. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Okay, so you would be aware that Councillor Tibble is the person when I did the appointments. So this is a process of us just formally voting and saying myself and Councillor Tibble will be on the disaster relief fund, and then we will grant the $50,000 because, as you know, there need to be a minimum of 50,000. And this was a decision made by the previous councils, I think, anyway. So any questions? So we're on page 14 at our next paper.
Sorry, Your Worship, there was a mistake in terms of there was a appendix loaded. This is an attachment, so the actual report is next one is 59. It was duplicated as well as the trust.
But I thought I had to. Okay,
no. So the next paper.
Oh, I see what you say. It was
Yes.
just an appendix.
Yes.
Just totally ignore me. And let's move on to page 59. Councillor Tibble and myself are well established on that committee. We don't have to do it again. This, Pauline, you'll have to talk to us a little bit about, and I'm not sure if Nadine wants to chip in as well. Nadine, I might pass over to you and talk about our regional sector shared services organisation. Thank you. So we're on page 59, councillors.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. E morena tātou. So just in terms of this paper, I'm not sure if we've canvassed with you yet. We are part of the Bay of Plenty Shared Services, local authorities shared services, and so we get a number of benefits through that, what they call LASSs. And this is a similar shared service approach for the regional council sector, regional and unitary councils, of which there are 16. Essentially what it is set up a council-controlled organisation of which we are shareholders and we appoint a director, and it enables us to achieve efficiencies, share information, staffing, and the like, in order for us to do our business locally, but also influence policy nationally. So there are currently, so we went out as part of the Local Government Act, we are required to engage with the community on establishment of a CCO. So we've undertaken that process. We have now, in April, Council agreed to join the regional sector shared service organisation, and this outlines for you the constitution, so you know what we're signing up to. We do have a number of staff that participate in special interest groups, so you'll hear our staff refer to SIGs. So I think Pauline might be able to correct me in terms of the financial contribution that we give to date, but we participate in programs like LAWA, which is our land and information and water information portal for the sector. Some of that comes out of the RSSSO and many other types of more operational work. So essentially that's what it is in terms of the appointed director. So as with the BOTPLAS, I sit on as the council's director with other chief executives, and similarly in this LAS arrangement would be myself or one of the directors that would be the representative, given the operational nature of the activities that are held within the RSSSO.
Good, thank you for that. Any questions? Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Cranston.
Just looking at the proposed fee or the proposed annual contribution, is it anticipated, or have you allowed for what may happen in the event that local government review and reform has an impact on this?
Sorry.
Yeah. All right, sorry, Nadine's got
Go,
it.
Nadine.
Yes, through the chair. So that is an inherent risk in terms of what's facing the sector currently, but it's no different to what's facing us if we were to change through BOTPLAS. What the approach has been and what we've discussed is that we will continue as status quo, but this actually allows us to prepare more for changes and demonstrates the commitment that we are around achieving efficiencies of scale across the sector. So it is one step, I guess, in a way that that gives effect to some of the principles that have been talked about in the reforms. It was also, and who worship might want to comment, that this was one of the activities that the regional sector mayors and chairs had tasked the chief executives to undertake to ensure that we are maximising our relationships across the sector and not duplicating where unnecessary. Not sure if that really answered your question, Councillor Robinson. Hope.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cranston.
When we set up BOTPLAS, it was indicated that it might be a 1 or 2 person responsibility to administer it, and so the OPEX was based on that. I'm just curious about the operational expenses and how this goes on, because if BOTPLAS is now up to 5 or 6 employees, so the operational expenses must have gone up accordingly. So if we've got another one there, how are the operational expenses allocated to the shareholders? Are the shareholders responsible? And if so, do we have any control of the operational expenses going up and not wanting them to go up?
Through the chair, yes, we do. So we purchase per service that we want to engage with. So there might, and there also in terms of the membership, so Auckland Council has the lion's share of the investment that's in here, followed by Wellington, Waikato. So the bigger councils pay more, but also in terms of the services that we want, you choose whether you want to buy into those. Similarly with BOTPLAS.
Thank you. Councillor Parata.
I was just wondering, and I maybe you've already partially answered this question, is what level of control do we have, or if we're part of the shared services agreement? Like, do we still retain our ability as a council to decide what services we procure? And then the other supplementary question is, do we know what the submission from consultation was that was against? I just want to, it wasn't part of the board papers, and I just want to understand what the reasonings were against that particular submission.
For the last submission, I'll just check what it was. I think it was a generic answer, but we can get it back to you specifically what it was. And And as to the services, I think Nadine mentioned that we procure what we want to sign up to. The other parts of this process is a statement of intent. And also with Nadine being on that she has the ability to say what are the, as part of the member as a direction, but the statement of intent comes back to us to say, do we agree with the overall direction?
Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just off the back of Councillor Cranston's question, Nadine, in regards to OPEX of this RSSSO, I hear in regards to we get to purchase the services, but similar in the same vein as what Councillor Cranston was kind of getting at, do we have any shareholder influence in regards to the operational expense into those services that we'll be purchasing? Because we could still be paying for increased OPEX costs administered by this current populace, but just in a services way. So we still end up in the same situation of having paying into that specific service, but that has a lot of OPEX attached to it. Is there any way that we do get to influence that as shareholders?
So your influence is through me, and currently in Te Uru Kahika, which is the regional sector name, there are 7 staff. So in there are the likes of project managers, chief science advisor to the sector. There are also 7 contractors. And so this is formalised and brought them together so that there's that visibility over the operational expenditure. And so I guess, yeah, so in response to your question, Councillor Wharehinga, that is, I am your conduit within which to control those operational spend as the shareholder. As you as the shareholder, yeah.
I don't think I have told councillors this, but I am actually the deputy chair of the regional sector. And I'm also on the National Council of New Zealand, the regional sector rep. I was going to write that in an email, but I think I forgot. So the regional sector is a really important part of what we do. And through both Nadine and I, we are very involved, and we see the value of, because we're also part of rural and provincial, but both Nadine and I see as one of the 6 unitary councils, the stuff that we do here, we find the most value by actively participating in regional sector. So I'm also very happy to support this, and I'll move this. Do I have a seconder? I'll come back to you. Yes, Councillor Robinson.
I've just located the submission in opposition, if you'd like me to read it out to you, for Councillor Parata's benefit and the new councillors. It's a very short submission. It's a very small paragraph.
Go for it.
It was submitted by Chris Clayton, and it says, doesn't support the proposition. It says GDC should have got on board with this over a decade ago to facilitate using IRIS for regional consents. As GDC is now moving ahead with another product to manage core functionality, including consents, it seems like a very strange time to start investing in the company that has an alternative product to do so, bracket their core business, aka IRIS, if we are not going to take advantage of this product at all. That's the submission.
Thank you for that. Okay, I have a mover in myself, a seconder in Councillor Cranston. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you for that. Okay, next report. We're doing well, councillors. See, everyone is coffeed up. So the next 2 reports are our standard reports, which you will see every time. And I know there's quite a bit to process in here. And in the new year, you will see it will start making sense once we work through those, especially the Treasury report as well. I think we can do a little workshop on that in the new year as well. But Pauline, I hand over to you, page 81, councillors.
Thank you, Worship. So as the Worship just said, it will be in the same format. And if you're reading this to begin with, you would take the first summary page on page 81, And what we will always refer to is what is the bottom line first. And so that says for the first 4 months, it is only the first 4 months of the year. So it's very, very early into our financial year. It is just basically saying we're on plan against what we expected to be at this particular point in time. And then we basically go in to say, well, what were the variances? What do we have in total revenue? Were there any changes for what we expected to be? And then we say, what is our total expenditure? Again, what were the variances, what we expected to be? And then we give a little bit of a summary of the capital expenditure total. So that summary, if you like, is your blueprint of, and that first line is, what's the bottom line? What are we doing? How are we going with it? I will just give it for the reference for it when you're actually looking at tables. And for those people who don't like numbers, I'm just going to actually say, how do you read it and take it? Because once you get it, you'll see it straight. You will start to look at it straight away and you'll think, okay, it'll take you through the rest of it. So on page 85, you have, which is probably the predominant one, is what your performance, the financial performance is for that year. And on that page, you have the categories and different types of what you expect to see, revenue or expenditure. But the very most left column that says October 22 actual, that's year to date. That is the performance, what's saying year to date. And in it, if it comes to, you look at, it says the second to bottom line says total comprehensive revenue expenses. Well, actually your bottom line, it's your net deficit. And with that, you'll see we expect to be 22.3 million. We're 22.2. We're on par. We're basically, we're on par with budget, which you see the budget alongside that against it. And then there's a variance column. So if you're looking at anything, cast your eyes down the variance lines. That's going to give you, where do I need to look at first when I'm reading the story? And in terms of that, there is a little bit of notes, which you have 1 to 9. And in the commentary that comes over in 86 onwards, it will explain a little bit what's going on in those, what's making it up, what does that actually mean, and what can I expect with regards to it. So overall, it's saying, yes, the bottom line is we're on par with budget. We had more income than we expected, and that's because we received more grant revenue relating to mostly the roading emergency works. We're ahead because of the amount that we've done, but then also we had more expenditure with the roading emergency works. Both of them kind of match each other, but that's where it is. The next part of the report, where most of the emphasis and seems the discussion go through, is your capital expenditure. It said, and so in the capital expenditure, if you're going to look at things, there are things, if you're going to refer to, is on page 90, which is all, is the capital expenditure program. It's broken up through the activities and what that does. Again, you go to the most left-hand column, it says, what have you spent October year to date? It says, where do we expect to be October year to date? And so what's the percentage of completion and what's the full year budget? That gives you the summary of it. Again, there are some further notes on those major activities, which is over in the following pages from 91 through to 92. One other thing, so just give you as a reference when you're looking at that, on page 93, 93 gives you the spend for the year. And when you start on that, there's an orange line, and that orange line is what we've done to date. And then you've got the dotted lines where we expect to be for that full year. And then against that, you've got the prior year, what we actually did and completed, which is the bottom line, 79 million, and then the actual budget, full year budget associated with it. And then the only other ones, if you're looking at schedules and graphs, those people that do like graphs, is on 94. And the reason why we take roading, stormwater, water supply, and wastewater is probably the biggest spends, and also the critical infrastructure. In that last bottom lines on those, they again says the same things. When do we expect to do it over that full year? And where are we at this very short period in time of 4 months, knowing what that is. So happy to take any questions, and I'm sorry I went into that a little bit more details, but it's just to actually get yourself navigating around in the reports.
Perfect, Pauline, and you will see most of the notes are very helpful, and often it is timing. When we receive a grant and when we are able to spend it and when we have to report on it, that cause the variances. So thank you for the notes. They're really extensive and it makes it really clear where we are at and what's happening. Councillor Elder.
Thank you. So page 85, Waka grant is quite far behind, 2 million. Is this concerning or is that to be expected?
So no, I'll say that it isn't. With the capital grants, where we receive the grants is what we've done. We receive it if we've done the expenditure. And so in terms of that, that's a phasing issue. It actually won't, we had a little bit of a phasing issue. Some of the things last year, we thought that we had estimated that this amount of work would be done within that financial year. It didn't, but the money, the funding follows when the work occurs. So that's just 4 months in, what's the expectation with it?
Supplementary question. So does that kind of explain why roading is so far behind on its planned expenditure? It's about 70%, I think, of its where it wanted to be at this point in time.
Through your worship, so there's two things that play in that part of the report. So the first is the grants that you're seeing there, the $2 million. Most of that is work that we haven't either completed yet or we haven't invoiced yet. So for example, we invoiced $400,000 yesterday to Kanoa for the Waipawa flood control scheme around because we delayed. So we hadn't sent them the invoice because we hadn't done the work. So they're very much done on a, once the work's done, send the invoice, we get paid normally the 20th of the following month. Regarding the roading spends, that's around, it's a different type of spend where we're sitting there. So there's maintenance costs and operational costs, which I can talk to in operations this afternoon if you want us to. Predominantly, we're delayed by the flood works that have been happening and it's raining. So we're supposed to have been further along on our sealing season. So we're in chip sealing when we're normally supposed to be doing a lot of work when it's dry. That was supposed to start in October. We're still well behind because it hasn't stopped raining since October. So that's more around delays in weather for the roading, but we're very much looking to catch those up by running through February, March until we run out of season, probably in April sometime.
Councillor Robinson.
I think Mr. Wilson may have explained the circumstances around my question. Is there any discernible cost implications for council with the delay between getting work done, the funding that's been granted or approved for work done, and the escalating procurement costs? Is there any discernible impact on us?
Through your worship, if it's a project where we know the funding is coming from an external party, whether it be Kanoa or it be Waka Kotahi, we're working to milestones that we invoice on those. The escalations can hit when there's a delay in a funding approval to start a project. So for example, for emergency works, yes, over time as things deteriorate, as the committee's aware, that can impact costs and escalations. But when we have a project that's underway, we don't have any issues with cash flow or rating costs because the payments are very prompt.
Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much for the report, Pauline. I did want to ask in regards to page 85, that OPEX overspend of about 5 mil. Just in your notes, you were saying that we're going to be over our year-to-date annual plan. You're envisaging that to still stay within our allocated yearly budget, though?
We'll be reforecasting what we're actually spending for the capital, for the emergency works. And we're actually saying what is the impact of that and what are the things that we had for a particular reserve, which was within, for the councillors that don't know, we call a fire reserve, which is a roading emergency works. Some of that will be there for the local share. That will take the difference for the bottom line, but what that does for the overall program by the 30th of June, we're working through that and how do we navigate the overall expenditure. And I don't think Dave has something else.
Through the chair, so a lot of this is in relation to our year-to-date budget. So we're tracking the impact of what happens with emergency works and working closely with Waka Kotahi about what that means to us as a council on our overall yearly budgets. But we have to come back in on budget by 30 June. So by 30 June, we have to have either found the money for the overspend that we're tracking, or we will be having to look at where we cut works in other areas of the roading budgets to ensure that we end up back at zero, because otherwise we won't have the funding at the end of the year. So very much from now going forward, it's a balancing act of making sure we can land back on zero, but knowing we've going to have to find some local share for somewhere for the amount of emergency works we have across the network.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pahuruhuriwai.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Pauline. It's a really thorough report. Thank you for helping to demystify some of that in there. I guess the question is around, I think I heard you say we get paid for work that's done, so we're paid retrospectively. So there's no, the hold up is not at Waka Kotahi's end. The hold up is at our end in terms of getting work done and then invoicing, or apart from the weather and everything else that's been talked about. So once the job is finished, they pay us. Is that right?
So there's two parts to the answer to that. So the first part of it is we have to have approval prior to starting the works when it comes to a lot of things. So in emergency works, we're able to do what's called an initial response, which is where we've racked up some significant costs so far this year. And that's around opening roads to ensure that whānau can get in and out of their properties, to ensure goods and services can move. So we have those costs that have hit us already across the network for a couple of events this financial year. Then we have to wait for prior approval for other works that are to happen. So when it comes to the emergency response cleanup, we get on and do that. For everything else that comes after that, that's where we have to wait for funding approval from Waka Kotahi before we're able to undertake those works.
Okay, councillors. Anyone want to move? Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one, I see we're heading for a $45 million increase in borrowings, which is the biggest increase we've ever experienced, I think, in recent time. And all the graphs are tracking below budget. From a business point of view, isn't it quite good to try and keep the belt tightened on other expenditure that's tracking nicely low, so that maybe we can come in under that 45 million extra?
So there's two things, and this probably leads into the next paper as well, which is around our debt. And our debt usually is for long-term nature, what we're borrowing down. And most of the debt why it's at the next biggest portion is because we're reaching the next biggest portion of our wastewater treatment plant. And so while you are seeing those of other renewals, what's on there, it's saying it's tracking is the wastewater treatment plant. And that's tracking to where we expect it to be. So by the end of the year, there is an increment that goes up for the full 140 million. But if we don't use it, we obviously don't draw down additional debt because of timings for anything. So everything is reforecast, redone on a cash flow basis. If we don't need it, we won't be drawing it down. But if we do need it, we have to start to look at the long-term nature of what our needs are.
Okay, I'm just going to make this comment once that going forward, I want people to, it's a discipline that we need to exercise, speak once. So I'm going to ask if you have some questions, clump them together so that we can just make sure we get into the rhythm where when we're in, especially in a big agenda, we ask questions once. And then sometimes people do try and speak again, and it's just at the discretion and time. But let's see how we go. Do I have a mover for this paper? Moved by Councillor Gregory, seconded by Councillor Tibble. If there's no more discussion, all in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you. So next, Pauline, give us the 1 minute lowdown on this paper, because this is one that needs a lot of analysing for new councillors just to get their heads around.
Thank you, Worship. So I am just going to give you the big picture when you're looking at these kind of things. This is about what our debt is. And the first summary page tells you what it is. So first it says we're at just under 98 million. We expect to have 142. And it says we have a policy, which is a policy required under the local government to have prudent financial management. And so we have a policy which is overseen by PwC, which sets you need to be within compliant of it for good, sound, prudent management of your debt. And all of that says we're compliant. But what you need, what looks up and what are the main features of that policy is this, like, is to say the debt maturity. So if you're at home, you may have one loan or in your mortgage on your home. We have 97 million and we break that down usually into 5 million chunks at a time, drawing it down. So you don't want to have all 97 due on the same period of time.
Especially not with these interest rates.
No, so the debt, the maturity says, okay, have some of that between 15 to 60% between the first 0 years to 3. And then it says, okay, then you spread that between 3 and 7 years, you have a percentage, and then greater than 7 years, you can have it up to 40%. So that's your debt, spread your risk of when it's due. The next part of it is about the interest cover. It's basically an insurance cover for in case your interest rates go up higher than what you expect. And so we have that, and up to 60% of our interest that we see is covered by swaps or our interest insurance, if you like. And what that's called, if you like, it's just called a corridor policy. And it says you must between the minimum and the maximum. And if you take it intuitively, it says you need to have your greatest cover in the first 3 years. You need to have the greatest amount of that cover being spread. Afterwards, after you get to year 7, you don't need to have as much because you're hedging ahead of time.
Just give us 10 seconds of how you get to those decisions through PwC and monthly
So the policy is set by PwC, set by council, but on best practice and also what is your maturity profile is going through. They take into that consideration. And so that is, so if you were looking at page 99, if you're looking at that, and you only probably have to see it once, you see that graph, there's a black line on that first one, there's a lower one, that's the minimum level, and then the higher black line is the higher line. We need to have, and that shaded color is where we are with our interest cover, we're in policy. And if you were reading between that risk policy, but it says the current year says you need to have higher, 55% is covered. And you can see in the first 3 years, as it decreases as you go along, because that's the greatest risk in the first period of time. So that's your policy, which with it. The only other one that I would be saying that you look at is, and to be aware of, is what actually is our interest rate at the moment, and what do we pay? And what is it that we're seeing? And that is on page 100. On that page 100, there is a graph. The yellow line that shows on there is what we put into 2 successive LTPs. It says that was the benchmark that we did. We put the same rate into the others. The red line is if we didn't have swaps, our interest rate cover, if you like, with it, that would be what our basket of interest rates would occur. But because we pay swaps, which is a little bit higher of a premium to mitigate our risk, that is what is our average rate of interest. And as you can see on there, that's for November, it is below their benchmark, which is around about, average rate is about 3.4%. So they're the main things. It's just to say, this is our debt, this is what we expect to be in the year, and this is how we manage it by our maturity when all our debt's not all at once, and how do we cover our interest exposure to if it increases. Happy to take any questions.
So I have a question about us seeing increasing interest rates. Can you talk a little bit about how that affects us and what the tools that we have, are they sufficient? Do we have to relook? What is our plan of action in a time of uncertainty?
So we have a monthly meeting or more if we need to with PwC. And that's one of the other questions. This is what is our interest rates? What's the forecast? What's actually going on? And when they are mapping that, I think a month or so ago, they were saying in the next 7 to 8 years, or even over the 10-year period, on average, that would be about 4.6%. Now they're actually saying where the way the market's moving, and especially in the USA, that they're actually going in some cases below below 4%, just below. So it's not escalating, they're saying it's consolidating, and this is what it is. But we continually do that. We continually see what it is, and they're actually forecasting the different parts of it. And the way that we try and manage it is by having those interest rate swaps. When do they kick in? They're over the money, which means over, say, 4.5 or 4.6%, we don't pay anymore. We've capped the interest rate, so we don't see that because we're paying a little bit more for our insurance.
So that's great for us now. It can bite you in the butt when it goes really low. But for now, we have those interest rate swaps that do protect us against the interest rate. Right, the floor is open, councillors, if there are any questions, but Pauline did such a great job. Thank you, Pauline. If not, is someone willing to move the paper? Councillor Foster and Councillor Parata, all in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you for that, Pauline. Okay, page 103, councillors, we talk about our outstanding debt as well as our debt trends. Kia ora, Fiona.
So this is a bit, if you like, what's occurring in our rates, in our debt, in everything across the board. And it's a bit of a summary, and it has a little bit of a historical trends to give you some background of what we have been doing, what have we been looking at, and what do we intend to do, especially in line with the long-term plan and the changes with it. I'm hoping that it was comprehensive, but I'm sure that there may be some particular questions around it. So Fiona, as you've met in the World Cafe Day, will be able to also answer perhaps some of the more detailed questions with it, but happy to take any questions.
Councillor Gregory and then Councillor Cranston.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend the council regarding the one-on-one relations and tailoring solutions, and you're getting more enduring solutions. Yeah, I think that's a really good to see, and thank you for that.
Councillor Gregory. Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, the fact that low-income people can apply for the remissions, I kind of think that should be out there a bit wider. At the moment, they're probably identified within here by people identifying through not paying the rates and being in that situation, but there could be people that are paying the rates that are still in a really difficult affordability situation, but they've prioritised paying the rates under great pressure because they don't know that there's a remission available. So I think the fact that remissions are available to low income and not just the older people, which is the understanding, I think some communications around that fact would be quite good, because just because they're not paying the rates doesn't mean that those are the only ones that are having affordability problems.
Currently, we go out to the retirement villages to make people more aware, and we work with budgeting agencies and Ministry of Social Development, so they are aware as well of the rate rebate scheme, and when they do the budgeting, they always talk about offering the rate rebate as part of that package. But we can certainly look at running some community workshops. In the past, we've definitely gone out to like the bowling clubs and just held them at different areas around the city, and even we did run a couple of morning teas here at council. One where we invited anybody who wanted to come, and the other was working with agencies like the different budgeting agencies, working with social workers at the hospital, and that, so we can certainly look at more promotion.
Yeah, I think traditionally there has been a focus on the older generation, but there's probably at the other end of the spectrum, there's probably difficulty as well.
Thank you for that. Councillor Foster.
Page 106, number 10, Sundry debt stands at 1.1 million. This is 500K increase when compared to 30 September due to 2021, and is due to timing of a central government grant. What is that central government grant? Is that a refund from, oh, no, you tell me.
No, it's part of it was for Waineki. So the grant towards that. So it's a timing issue that we'll get them from there. Most of that's been resolved, but we've just got another little part of it.
Since.
Yeah, some of the half of it has. And so therefore we've just got a little bit that we work through with them directly.
Councillor Ria and then Councillor Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a couple of questions around in terms of the rates, remissions and penalties and Māori freehold land. It's my understanding, and I have been asked by those who do engage in Māori freehold land that they are definitely in a predicament at this time, whereas they don't fit into these set categories that are here. So there is a dwelling on the land, but the land itself is not being used for a dwelling. They are wanting future development, but at this point in time, future development isn't possible. So what they were finding difficult is that they were feeling as if they weren't fitting into the requirement that it would take for to be entitled to those rates remissions. So just in terms of that, is there an opportunity for that does it happen case by case, or is there a set a standard of what should be achieved in order to get those types of rebates?
Good question. Fiona.
Through the chair. So at the moment, we are doing a strategic review of Māori freehold land in the district. And as part of that process, we will be bringing the findings of that so council can make a decision on changing or bringing in any new rating remission policies for Māori freehold land. And that's probably going to be, well, the report is due for completion about March next year. So it'll be between March and May or June that we'll come to council with the information and can put ideas out there about what you would like to see and what you would like to change. That we will definitely work with people as far as fitting in with the rate remission policies, and we have a platform to do that out in the community through some rural workshops that we run up in our coastal areas. But yes, there is the opportunity coming up very soon to look at those changes. There was changes to the rating legislation in 2021 for Māori freehold land, and a lot of our rate remission policies that we have at the moment have been superseded by the rating legislation. And in actual fact, some of the rating legislation that was brought in, they looked at what we were offering, and it was used as one of the bases for the changes changes in the legislation for Māori freehold land. So yes, there is changes coming up and the opportunity to review things.
Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Parata.
Yes, paragraph 19, the term low income households receiving 34,000. How was a low income household defined? Is that the combined income of a household as opposed to a single person living on their own having less than 34,000?
So it is a person applying for the rebate and their partner. So it's the combined household of income of that household. So we do take into, it is means tested, so we do take into account the husband, wives or partners income. But also what's taken into account is if they have dependents, so if they were to have 2 children, that there's a reduction for each child that counts towards a rebate as well.
Councillor Parata.
I just wanted to mihi to the council in regards to the Rural Support Roadshow and the mahi that particularly Angelie has done. The Rural Support Roadshow has made it possible for whānau living in rural communities to understand the rates rebate, to understand their rates obligations, to set up supports around payments. So I really wanted to mihi to that particular initiative and the important mahi that it does for our community who are quite afraid of having to deal with their rates, and also just wanted to support what Debbie was saying about the approach in terms of trying to be understanding and supporting our whānau to attend to their rates instead of looking at punitive action. Yeah, no, that's me. The rest of my questions have been answered.
I just want to add to that, that initiative of the Rural Roadshows was from that staff member, Angelie. Totally focused on making a difference to the community. She spearheaded it and she is passionate about it. So that's a really good outcome. And what she actually is doing is fundamentally changing the way that we do this. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Councillor Pahuruhuruwai.
During my conflict, sitting here as a very proud auntie. And thank you for recognising Angelie's great work, Pauline. My question was around, and to total for the success of that. We hear it all the time from whānau across the coast, what a difference it's making. And that regularity of contact, kanohikitea we say in our communities, if you're seen, then people begin to trust you. It took a little while of constant coming back and maybe just 1 or 2, but now there's lots of people that understand on a regular basis the rural roadshows will happen in their community. And so they're, they get ready with all their paperwork and turn up, for their appointments. So thank you for continuing to support that. Michelle, my question was around when you do the assessments, the means testing, do you consider also with the kaumātua, with pakiki, the elderly, if they have in their care mokopuna, is that also taken into account?
Yes, if that mokopuna is living with them and one of their dependents, so they're paying all the costs, and that, yes, it would contribute to that.
Councillor Telfer.
Yeah, can I just have a clarification also? The Local Government Amendment Act on the rating of whenua Maryland, so now it's not rated, that's correct. What about, we've got a lot of land that private owners have got, which comes under PMA type land or QE2, those sort of things where they can't extract an income stream from. Is there any avenue there as well? Can we just have a clarification, please?
With regard to Māori freehold land that is non-rateable, it's got to meet a certain criteria of it not being used, and that criteria is included in the Rating Act. As far as Kiwi2 covenants, they are non-rateable. We don't rate those. So where we've got land that's got a Kiwi2 covenant on it, we exclude the covenanted area and set up a separate, what we call plate. So that part is non-rateable, and our rating valuer works out the value of that, and then we deduct that off the assessment that we do rate. Some of the PMAs are definitely rated. The value of those would be, the rating value of those would be reduced accordingly to take into account if they're highly eroded areas. But they are still rated, a lot of those PMAs.
And QE2, what is the arrangement with QE2?
Kiwi2 covenant is not rated. It's under the schedule in the Rating Act, which excludes them from being rated. Okay. And previously council had a policy, and we still do, have a council policy that remits those as well. So we haven't rated those for a long time. Covenanted areas.
Thank you for all your questions. Anyone willing to move the report? Councillor Pahuruhuruwai, seconded by Councillor Ria. If there are no more questions, all in favour, contrary, carried. We are doing very well. So next we are going to move to our Kiwa pools, fees, charges and submissions. And are we going to keep it right till the end, Pauline? That's what we said, eh?
Yes, because there is a submission.
So what we will do, we'll do it all together, but I'll just set the scene so people can start thinking about it a little bit. So you will, in that report, you can see it's quite a chunky report. With some of that was the information that the previous council used to look at different models of funding. There's also submissions in here from our community who then came back. I note in the report as well that there were some assumptions made before submissions were received. So some of the submissions we received were made on wrong assumptions. And when you go through the submissions, you can see the few where that was corrected, but they were already received. So what I suggest is that I will move on to. Are we just going to break for a cup of tea? Yeah, right. Let's go wild. You've been such great workers. We are. I was just testing you. We're going to break. 10:15. We'll be back. Councillor Robinson, do you have a quick comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You just said that the information was attached to the report, but Appendix B is missing.
Well, let's take a look. And so today we are listening and getting all the information. That's what happens at hearings. We listen, give feedback to staff who then prepare a final report for us. And the decision we will make will be next week at our council meeting. So today we will listen to the submitter. We will also read the submissions, also take a look at the background information that was supplied. Can someone please, while we drink a cup of coffee, just follow up and take a look where Appendix B is? And what is Appendix B?
Appendix B to attachment 22-171.1. It was the appendix to the experts, Xanthi Consultants report. It was provided to us at the previous hui, but it's been dropped out.
Thank you.
In this lot.
Can that please be emailed to everyone as if it's a massive attachment? 4 pages. Can Tony, can you just quickly touch base with Heather? We break for 15 minutes, 10:15. Please be seated. Thank you for your great work.
Yes. One that's got Dave and James and a little bit of Joe in this particular area is that it may.
Oh, they're all giving each other the stink eye.
So yeah, just as a key when you're looking at that, there is some of the things, it's usually within 5% of whatever that KPI was, so it's minor changes. There is on page 273, when you're looking at the finances and things, there's a colour coordinated, and it shows if you're red for revenue, you're -5, green is all the rest. So that gives you a little bit of an explanation of what do you expect to be within those movements. So yeah.
Okay. We're ready to move to the next section, which is Mr. Roads and Footpaths, 280. Roads and Footpaths, 280 to 287. Please come into the hot seat, Mr. Wilson. So councillors, page 280 to 287, take a look, and then we open up the floor for questions. Councillor Wharehinga, thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I was just wanting to know what the foreseeable plan is, in the light of as the report states, in the light of increasing diesel costs and limiting our ability to roll out a lot of the work, what's the, you talked about reduction in some of the levels of service. What's the foreseeable in regards to that around our budget, like our budgetary constraints?
Through your worship, so the roading operational budgets and the maintenance budgets in particular are under increasing pressure at the moment. MB have set the guidelines when it comes to the fuel variations, so they have to be done consistently across the country. Just the rising fuel costs and the operational costs, there is a standard that we're applying to our contracts where that is due. So not all contracts are open for the fuel escalations. There are some that are not. By the virtue of when they were actually negotiated, or they already may have the new rates in them. We are looking, as we've said earlier in today's meeting, around the impacts of what the emergency works and flood responses are going to have an impact on our operational budgets, and they will have an impact on the budgets. They're too big for us to be able to absorb the cost of those sort of scales. Once we know where we're tracking with those, and it'll be earlier in the new year, we'll bring back what the programs will look like, and we'll show you where we're going to be adjusting those roading budgets in order to accommodate the spends that we've been having to take this year.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson.
Councillor Tiba, are you waving at me? Okay, are we ready to move to our next section? Oh, Councillor Pahuru-Huriwai, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess, so where there are situations where roading is closed or is going to continue to remain closed for some time, how are the families affected by that continue to be supported maybe by our welfare team? How is that communicated to them, and what's the process?
So through your worship, there are a number of communities that we are still opening up. For example, out at Matakawa, the road there is still, we're working through the options for what we're going to do there. We're hoping to provide an update to a number of families by the end of this week as to what our timeframes are for us to reinstate. One of the things we try to do, and we very much want to work with the community if they're facing issues, how we can help with whether it being getting stock in or out, or whether it being needing access to things. So we're happy to work with them as long as they get in touch with us. Please don't assume that we know. So absolutely encourage whānau to get in touch with us where they're having issues around roading access where it's still cut off. But most roads have some form of access at this stage. We're seeing how much we can open up as fast as we possibly can.
Kapai, all good. Councillor Ria.
Your Worship, just around the walking and cycling ways, is there future plans to have walking and cycling ways upgraded in communities further north of Uawa?
So through your worship, there's a number of walking and cycling. We have a walking and cycling strategy for Tairawhiti. There's a number of different avenues that we look at when we discuss walking and cycling, whether it be in partnership with the township upgrades that are underway, or whether it be looking at where there's funding available for us to do further works to link our communities. But those are a long-term plan discussion. So in this LTP that we have at the moment, there's nothing further north of Uawa outside of the township upgrades that are there. But we are aware of some separate projects outside of council that we've been supporting to see how they go through. But there's nothing in this LTP. To be the next LTP we'll look at those.
Okay, councillors, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Michael Muir to council. Welcome, Michael. We are running a little bit early, and when I saw you walking in, I thought, oh, well, let's get cracking. Councillors, I take you to page 350, and it is the museum's annual report. Michael, would you like to give us a... Yep. Share a microphone. Here we go. If you want to give us like a 1 minute, 2 minute lowdown.
Thank you for the opportunity to report. A number of you I haven't met, but great to see you all. Apology from Eloise. Eloise is in Wellington today, and it just sort of clashed with the meeting. Normally she does this. I'm happy to answer any questions on the report. I see you've got 394 pages of detail for the meeting today, but there's quite a bit of detail in the report. But what particularly for the new councillors, it's just knowing that the museum was established in 1954 with strong support from iwi. It changed its legal structure from a incorporated society to a charitable trust in 1999. Now, the charitable trust is probably something that needs to be understood. It's probably a better museum setup than any in the country in terms of representation. We've got a Friends of the Museum group with four trustees. We've got iwi representative from Mahaki, from Ngāi Tamanahiri, Rongwhakata, Hawiti, and Ngāti Porou. So, and then two council representatives. Currently, we're looking for a new council representative and look after Alan Delator, who's your other council representative. He looks after as treasurer. He's a chartered accountant and has been very good. He's been involved really for the last 20 years. So it's important that you maintain that relationship. Core principles of the trust: act in accordance with principles of Treaty Waitangi. Financial sustainability, we only get that with help from the council.
Yes.
Valued internal, external relationships, and professional museum and art gallery practice standards. Eloise is very good. She's involved nationally with museums as well, and she's got a great role, sort of very good support from staff and the trustees. With council, we had a 21-year lease and contract for services. We're in the process of renegotiating that with council, and it's going to be a 10-year arrangement rather than 21. But Nadine has that detail. We've been backwards and forwards as lawyers, and Nadine still has to come back to us on it. It's all a little complicated with the buildings. The land was given to the council for museums. The museum trust have built part of the buildings. Leisner House, which is where the art people are, is actually owned by the council. The Wiley Cottage is owned by the council. So it really is quite a complicated little arrangement, but it's working well, and we have the services. But it's really whether there are any questions on the accounts or any other questions that you have.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Michael. And thank you. It's always a pleasure going through the report and just getting a recap of everything that happened across the road for the last year. So I'll open the floor, and if there are any questions, please feel free. Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michael. Probably one of the disappointing things about museum is the fact that you can't see a lot of the exhibitions and a lot of the treasures in there, which are in storage. And I note that with the return of the Rongwhakata asset and another 203 items have been added in this year, so much of it is in storage and not open for viewing. So
work is being done on the Jack Richards Gallery for that to be open with more of the time.
Yeah.
But
is this an extraordinary year with 203 items plus the return of Rongwhakata? Would that be an extraordinary amount of stuff to pick up in 1 year to have to deal with? Well, if you can't display it, you're going to have to find storage space for it.
We've got the storage space, and we are going to be displaying some of it. We've had really, it was a treasure having the material from overseas for longer than we. And basically, that was meant to go back after a year. 2019, it only went back last year.
Yeah.
And that really was a fabulous treasure for those that hopefully most of you would have seen it.
Yeah.
Kia ora. I just want to extend my my best wishes to the museum. Quite often on a Saturday after taking my kids to the farmers market, my daughters and I will head over to the museum and we'll pop through for a quick look, and just the variety of different types of works of arts that have been on display quite regularly, maybe monthly, up to 3 monthly to 6 monthly. I think the most recent one I saw was a beautiful photography portrait of Pacifica portraits, which covered Tāmoko and Uhi, and they were just presented beautifully and just looked absolutely stunning on the wall. So I just really want to commend those of you working very hard at the museum for the things that you do, because I'm definitely one of the members of the community that enjoy going in and checking out what's happening there regularly. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Kia ora, tēnā koe for your report. I don't necessarily have a question, but I personally haven't had the opportunity to go over to the museum, but on Councillor Rea's recommendation and this report, I think it's important that we share what's happening at the museum. And really, I was just going to say that I'll make a commitment to making sure that that message is getting far and wide further up the coast, so that our whānau know that it's a place that they can also go and experience. And I'm not sure that they know that at this point. Kia ora.
Oh my goodness, everyone's just waving. Councillor Tupara.
Thank you for your report. I'm wondering with the way the museum is set up with various parties involved at various levels, with the ownership of one asset or one building with one organisation and one with another and that sort of thing. Do you have any thoughts on whether or not it might be more efficient if in fact all the assets of the museum were brought together under one umbrella, so that the trust or some other body has a sense of improved efficient management across the whole of the organisation?
I don't know that would make a lot of difference, because you've got C Company. We have a memorandum of understanding with C Company and we help with them. It's their building. And really, it wouldn't be an easy one. Wiley Cottage is clearly, it's a historic sort of building that really is council. Whereas the money, as a charitable trust, we're able to raise other funds to be able to do the building, to add. And there is major work to be done on the building.
Just in line with Councillor Cranston then, and major work to be done on the building, are there plans to expand at any time in the future, given the collection, as the collection grows, and whether or not there's
Eloise would probably be better to answer that question, but we are definitely working on something for that. But we need to come back to council on it too. All right. We need the room.
Yeah. And finally, just on Councillor Parata's point about travelling exhibitions throughout Rohe as well, to cater for those communities further afield in the city.
I need to talk, we'll talk to the education section, because that's really, it's important for the children to know. And that is being done. I think about 5,000 or 6,000 children actually came to the museum and did different things in conjunction with the museum and Eastwood Hill and others.
Thank you for the report. Thank you to Eloise as a previous board member for Ngāti Porou. I fully appreciate all the mahi that's been done. And just want to thank the staff for which there has been, I know that there's been several occasions where they've gone out to work with specific hapu when they've found taonga alongside the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, and making sure that those taonga are adequately cared for, and just acknowledge the expertise that we have in our museum team. It's great to see Te Manu Huia and Ora and Huia Brown and Joanna in the education space, given the focus on the curriculum on New Zealand history. It's awesome to see kaimahi who are fluent in te reo Māori as well, who will mean that our kura kaupapa and kohanga reo better able to engage in that space. So just a big mihi to Eloise. She does an amazing job as the director, and I don't have a question. I just, whatever the council can do to support that good work that's being done, I support it.
Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, then Councillor Wharehinga, then Councillor Foster.
Likewise, I want to talk of the accolades that have passed. Mike, thank you very much to you, the trustees, Eloise, and the staff and team at the museum. What you provide to our community is top level, and the impact it has is fantastic. So thank you so much for your money. Thank you.
Kia ora, Mr. Muir. I have a question. Obviously, I share the sentiments of the councillors around the table in regards to my thoughts about the museum. I also shared those with you last night. But I wanted to actually ask specifically in regards to page 19 of your of the annual report, page 372 of our agenda. It's in regards to the facilities, right? It's been a thorny issue for us collectively. So you know, like it says here that the delivery timelines were impacted by COVID-19. It also says in the fourth line of the projects under progress that there's no substantive progress has kind of been undertaken. Did you want to inform us in regards to how the facilities maintenance stuff, and specifically how's the roof going?
It'd be a tremendous help. There's a tree that's a problem there that we need to negotiate with someone to actually take down, because it's the leaves on the it's a big tree between Leisner House and the museum, and the leaves there are a problem because it's difficulty getting on the roof. It's a safety issue, and it's a matter of clearing it. That's been a problem with the roof, but as there was an agreement sort of about 5 years ago to replace the roof that was never done. But there's an issue with that, and that's something that we need to, but it's actually clearing the roof is the first thing we need to do. And clearing those leaves.
And conversations are in
Yes,
train in
yeah,
regards to
yeah,
this? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
That's right.
For a great report, Michael, and again, congratulations to everyone. Fantastic asset for the region. But I just want to note that yeah, the numbers are down with patronage and quite considerable. And I know that there's been COVID and people are a bit reluctant to leave home and everything. But my question is, if over the last few months where you think people are getting back to normality, have you seen an increase or the same amount of visitors of what you would have had this time of the year?
It's certainly picked up.
Yeah.
Basically, we couldn't have functions, so we didn't get people for those.
Yeah.
We can now have functions, and with cruise ships, quite a few people came through.
Yeah.
On that. So there's certainly more activity.
Yeah. Sure. So you're looking pretty confident that you've reached your target next year for.
Well, we haven't a whole year, but we should. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all your beautiful contributions. And Michael, please also convey our thanks to Eloise. I heard her on the radio about the U-boat unveiling, and it was very, very interesting. She was on the panel, speaking to the panel, and she did such a great job just sharing with everyone that the historic places Tairawhiti unveiling of the plaque there. So please, I know she's doing some mahi in Wellington today, but please on our behalf also thank you. And also thank you to yourself and the board. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
There will be no issues with someone wanting to move this paper. Councillor Gregory and Councillor Pahuri. All in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
We'll catch up soon.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Take care. Okay, Mr. Wilson, welcome back. So we are going to move to Land, Rivers and Coastal. That's page 288 to 293. So I'll give you a minute to get to that. 288. Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's in here, but I noticed somewhere that the cost per person traveling on the bus is actually $20, which is quite a massive subsidy. And are we going to, at some point, sit down and have a look at how we could better do this public transport thing?
So I'm just going to clarify, we're land, rivers and coastal now. Are you still
Oh,
asking
sorry, I thought-
questions in regards to the roading?
Yes, I didn't realise we'd
Okay.
finished that.
By all
Sorry.
means, go for that. But if there are still questions about section 2 that we covered off just before Michael came, feel free.
Mm.
So go for that, and then we'll move on to
Onto the
land,
next one.
rivers and coastal. Thank you. So I think the question you have was still in the 280 to
It
287.
was, I didn't get a
Yeah.
chance. When
By
Michael
all
looked in.
means.
So through your worship, the fare box recovery is set as part of the regional land transport plan and the long-term plan and the funding that sits inside that. There's been a wholesale review of how we're doing our public transport across the region and looking at what fare box recovery we should be looking at. So sorry, fare box recovery is around how much of a fare can we charge to recover the costs that we actually put against when it comes to people using public transport. So there's the review of the public transport system that's underway at the moment. That'll be coming through as part of your setting of the regional land transport plan, and it'll go to the regional transport committee first to look at how do you want to deliver public transport services across the district. And I say the district because it's not just the city buses as well. There's other avenues for public transport that we'd like to explore this time around with you. So that's done as part of your regional land transport plan, your LTP, fare box, and then that gets set as part of the next LTP coming up.
Thank you.
Anyone else still have questions about section 2? If not, page 288. Thank you, councillors. Land, rivers and coastal. And it goes to page 293. Looks all good. Oh, councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Did you just, do you want to expand on any, like the forward focused solutions in regards to landing Waipawa, that being the most, I guess, outstanding item in terms of its budget timing at the moment? Page, it's mentioned a lot in here, but there's 291 is the what we said we would do part.
So through your worship, for the Waipawa flood control scheme, it's very heavily impacted by ground conditions. So a lot of it at the moment, we are having to go slow because the conditions are just not conducive to digging up dirt and moving it around. It's all too wet. Part of what we're trying to do there is manage the work program so it's sustainable for us to fund, but then also for the contractor to do. So as you can see, the 21-22 financial year, we'd said we wanted to do 4.7. We could only do 4.4 million because we had to stop when we lost the winter months. We've got a similar issue this year now with the weather. So we were hoping to start that in October, and we'd heads established on site back in October at Manatuki there. However, we're just going to have to wait and see what this weather does and how far through the Earthwork Solutions team are able to go through this financial year. So a lot of the works that we have planning underway for this LTP, it was supercharged by provincial growth funding for us to be able to do more of the Waipawa flood control scheme. It is still 64 kilometres. We're about just over halfway through, I'd say now. There is a decision that you'll need to make in your next long-term plan about how much of it we're able to complete in the timeframe that we do that in. One of the things about that project is we have got some really great contractors there that are able to move the works forward and back depending on where they've got their gear. So they work in quite well with us around ground conditions so that it doesn't cost us and for their gear to be parked up. So the team are fantastic with that, but there is further funding that we will need to look for in the next LTP for that project.
Councillor Elder, Robinson, Cranston, Pahurahuriwai. You better remember that, people, because I won't.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just noting that the Waipawa scheme is well mapped out and well budgeted for. I'd just like to make a point that the Tairawhiti River has no plan and a very small budget, and I think we need to definitely fit that in to our schedule. Thank you.
Thank you for that observation. Next.
Thank you. On page 91, there's a reference to an application for central government funding for additional $9 million. when do you expect to hear from that application or about that application?
Through your worship, I understand it's not until May that we will find out about that.
Councillor Cranston and then Pahururiwai.
Page 292 about the levels of service. Who sets the expectation around level of service and the target timeframes? I mean, if someone comes up with a level of service that's got a $500,000 implication to it, then it's kind of stepping out of an expectation of meeting a target timeframe. So how do you handle all that? Because some of them are unrealistic, if you like.
Two things. All of these KPIs are basically agreed and set during the long-term plan process. And then what happens, you get interim reports of how we're progressing during the year, and then we actually report it in the annual report. So those performance measures come to you as a council to say, this is what those KPIs will be for each of those activities. The second part is how do we meet the target? I'll leave it over to this one.
So through your worship, it doesn't mean that we do everything that people ask of us. Often the answer is no. So that we've responded to the request.
Our resolution, not their resolution.
Correct.
Councillor Pahururiwai.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question was around, I guess, how are priorities, well, priorities are set in the long-term plan. I understand that, but in situations such as we've had over the past 12 months with the extreme weather conditions, is there opportunity to rejig the plan? Because obviously it's not going to go to plan because of unforeseen circumstances like the weather. It's my first question. The second question is, the reason I raised that is because it may be discussed in the Waipu JMA, I'm not sure, but concern that was raised at Tiki Tiki the other day was the Waipu River is eating into claiming a whole lot of land, especially down to the Mutuawa, Tiki Tiki and Rangitukia, and is now eating into land that it hasn't done before, and that's very scary for the community there, who have been very patient and want to have something done to correct or to, well, basically save the town from future flooding events. So how do we have to wait until their turn comes up? And that's the Waipu. There's a number of other rivers that are in a similar situation. How does the council support communities to put in place a solution? They might have a solution themselves. They talked about planting, poplars and things like that to help with the erosion, stop the erosion. Where do we get an opportunity to listen to them to put into play some of the solutions they have at a community level?
So through your worship, when we set the long-term plan budget, it's a 3-year fix of our spend. And part of that, and the important part of that, is how we consult with our community around the priorities that have been set. So we have our 3-year plan, we have our annual plan. That sets the budgets for where we're going to be spending our time, effort, money for council resources as part of that. When we respond to a flood event, and so for example, I'll use Tokomaru Bay. So the Mangahawini riverbanks, we had not budgeted to do works for in this financial year, and we hadn't budgeted to do the work that we've had to undertake, which is why we had to do the funding requests that we put through earlier around needing additional funds, because it was unbudgeted expenditure in response to an event that had happened. When it comes to something like reviewing how a flood control scheme works for a bigger area, it's a bigger piece of work than us being able to move that within our operational budgets, and we don't have delegation of staff to do those kind of things. That's a council decision that only council can make. Where it's affecting landowners or levels of service, that's when it would actually need to look at what's the adequate response for us to be able to process that. So that comes down to, we need to consult, is it a change from the long-term plan? Is it a substantial change or not? And there's a formal process to go through that. For issues like the Waiapu, there is the joint management agreement, there's the catchment plan that needs developed, and there needs to be then developed what is a program of work and associated funding that goes with that. So we're not easily able to move resources across that quickly. That's something that needs to go through a formal process for us to be able to do that. It's outside the remit of these annual budgets.
Councillor Tupara.
Just to follow on from Councillor Elder and in line with Councillor Pahuriwai's inquiry, a recent visit to the Ardai Valley, because it doesn't have a management plan in place, or we're unable to find the former management plan, I do have some concern that after that visit, that the significance of impact that river has potentially on the communities around that is somewhat alarming for myself. The state of the river and the maintenance of the river banks produces for council the possibility of some very dramatic weather responses further downstream from where we visited, particularly at Ohako Marae at Manutuke, given its proximity to the river. It's already taken action in the past to move its wharekai further away from there. I found it quite alarming that we don't have a plan for a valley catchment that seems to be in some dire need. And certainly we're receiving a targeted rate from the property owners up there with an inability to respond to that. And that's a concern for me as well. And alongside that, I wonder if there are other river catchments that are in a similar situation. And certainly the Waiapu is just like all the catchments all piled into one. And whether or not there was any intention to look into management plan development so that would come around to the wider planning issues for council. We've got those plans in front of us to ensure their inclusion into our wider planning programs.
So through your worship, we have a detailed paper coming to the operations committee this afternoon, which I'm happy to discuss this in further detail then.
We will cover that.
In short, yes, we do want to do more drainage districts.
Okay, councillors, are we ready for our next section? 294. Thank you. To 298, solid waste. Councillor Foster.
I just want to walk to page 298, and it's got it's solid waste, and it's to do with illegal dumping and the increase of illegal dumping of carcasses down at Marine Drive, Centennial Marine Drive, possibly from weather events and hunting season. An increase in animal remains dumped on the beaches has been noticed. My question is, this is always a negative thing, and we get it at all beaches, but has it been identified that there's any illegal stock theft been happening? Because that's, the remains of that is usually at the beach, and I've witnessed it a lot at the Party Beach. So has there been any increase in illegal that is noticeable in illegal stock theft? Exercise.
Through your worship, we haven't got the information as to whether or not it's related to illegal theft. If there's any identifier on the animal tag, then that'll be referred through. So, but we haven't got any information on whether or not there's an increase.
Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Parata. Thank you.
So, number of different issues under this heading I'd like to ask Mr. Wilson about. So the first one is, can you just give us a bit of a heads up where the waste management contract resolution situation is, if you can, in this forum? If you can't, that's I understand. Is that please?
Through your worship, I'm happy to discuss that in public excluded if possible.
Right.
Second one is in relation to Paukahu. I do recall us seeing a paper referencing a Tompkins and Taylor report in the last 6 months. Yeah, so some of us attended a hui with Rongo Whakaata Iwi Trust, Wānanga. I was talking to, I think it was their chair. They hadn't received that report themselves. I think we had sent it to the Pākahu Trust, but not actually to Rongo Whakaata Trust. So if that could be attended to, if that's an appropriate channel, I would have thought it would be. That'd be great. In relation to page 90, 296 and the point 3, obviously got a big red cross there under Paukahu. Can we try and really get some action on Paukahu? There seems to be death by 1,000 cuts. That report was some months ago, as mentioned. There hasn't been anything that I can recall of a progressing nature since then. And certainly working, I feel that we're not working strongly enough with Rongo Whakaata on this. And they've expressed to us individually and as a group their frustrations around the Paukahu situation. And I just kind of feel this is dragging and dragging and dragging. I want us to really get some action going with this in the new year. Second point is in relation to the curbside rubbish recycling. I see a report's coming back to us in January. I'm assuming we got the funding, the better off funding in relation to accelerating that. Will that be covered in January as to a plan for implementing that? Because from my recollection, the timeframes last time we discussed it were quite long, and I thought it could have been quite shorter.
So through your worship, the better off funding, the milestones that have been proposed have been approved by the funder. So yes, we are okay with the funding milestones that we've approved with them.
So in January, will you be bringing a plan to us to implement curbside recycling sometime next year?
We will bring you an option for how that will be rolled out, yes, for your approval or not.
All right, thank you. Getting there.
Do you have another question?
No, I think that's me. Thank you, Mr.
Good,
Wilson.
thank you. Councillor Parata.
I just possibly wanted to respond to Councillor Foster's point about illegal dumping of animals and rustling. And I wonder if this is potentially a response to food instability in Te Tairawhiti and the fact that we're getting closer and closer to Christmas. Might just be something for us to be mindful and aware of whānau as we head towards Christmas and more pressures come onto whānau. And perhaps there's an opportunity for us to look at what other organisations there are around us in Te Tairawhiti that can take pressure off whānau and that we can put on our channel so that there are options outside of rustling sheep and cattle and dumping their carcasses on the beach. The other thing I just wanted to raise in this forum is that it is my understanding from whānau and Tukumaru that the landfill in Tukumaru is falling into the beach and it's falling into the waters. And at this point, there are places that used to be swimming holes that are no longer safe for whānau to swim in. Locals are telling people, but there's no sign anywhere to say that it's not safe, that there's rubbish inside those water holes anymore. Just wanted to raise that in this space that the rubbish is falling into the ocean.
Thank you for that.
Through your worship, if I may, just on the Tukumaru Bay old landfill site, staff are aware and have remediation option in place for that around stopping any further rubbish from leaving the site. So that has been enacted and it's been undertaken. Regarding the signs around swimming, refer that over to the environmental science team. They can monitor that. We'll see what signs they put
So I
up.
just want to refocus all of us back to just sticking to what we are looking at here. We're not really talking about specific stuff. So just make sure we keep it high level and take a look at the finance and the matrix that are used here. But thank you, good questions, but I do want us to move forward as well. Any other questions in this section? If not, let's go to wastewater, page 299 to 307. Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Wilson? Now I scared everyone away. No one wants to ask a question. Well, let's move to our next section then. It's water supply. Mr. Wilson pays page 308, councillors. And we do have some of these discussions this afternoon in our operations as well, our water supply, so that will be covered there. Any questions in this section, councillors? Councillor Pahura, why? Thank you.
Because I saw the word rates, and I know it's been brought up with me and a number of our communities up the coast, especially, and that we now get a water rate. And so the question is, why do we get rated for water?
Where do you get a water rate?
It's in the rates bill. There's a water charge. And so, I mean, because they go through their rates bill. So why are we getting charged for water? I'll pull it up probably on Tairawhiti maps, but it's yeah, thank you.
So in terms of the last LTP, we did a review of our revenue and financing policy. And what was reviewed was looking at the three main free water rates, which is water supply, stormwater and wastewater. And stormwater at that particular point in time, 20% of that was applied generally across the district. And then there was looking at trying to get consistency of that infrastructure rate. So it reduced that down from stormwater to 10%, and then it said for wastewater and water supply, there was a 10% charge, even if you weren't connected to the facilities. And the basis of it was a public good associated with saying that it went wider than the general, and it was also consistent with how we do a river and land, the flood protection scheme, where up the coast it was 100% to be rated for those closest to the flood. We said that that wasn't fair to do that, and so they said that 60% of that is then applied generally. So it was a rationalisation of that kind of public good approach and changing within it. So then the last, as I say, last revenue and financing policy, there was that review, similar to our approach with our roading rate. We have 24% of that we say everybody pays on a UHEC. And then the rest of it is a portion to the impact on the road, even though that perhaps 80% is on the rural connection. So it was a morphing and reviewing and justification of all of those infrastructure rates and having a look at consistency of how it was applied.
Thank you. I don't know if that's going to go down well though, given that, I mean,
but we will have the opportunity to do that again next year when we review those policies again for our 10-year plan. We again would be able to sit down and look at the percentages that are spread across the region, specific areas. We do that again, Pauline, for our 10-year plan.
We look at the revenue and financing policy in conjunction of the way that we do things, and that comes into the early new year with it.
Nadine.
Kia ora, through your worship, I was also just going to say that this may all change anyway with Three Waters and how they might decide to rate or acquire finances.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, we are going to release you from the hot seat, and I'm going to welcome Michelle. Ms. Frey, thank you for joining us. Oh, did I miss the stormwater? Oh, David, thank you for reminding me, David. Stormwater councillors, page 317 to 323. Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a quick question. The noting that the underspend in regards to CapEx is due to access issues. Is that the public-private negotiation there? And also, do you envisage that still being an issue over the next financial year? And if so, will we need to adjust our budgets to meet our ability moving forward?
So through your worship, yes, it is an issue with access to private property. However, one of the things the team has started to do is develop up alternative routes or alternative projects so that we don't end up in the position that we are at the moment, where people who have indicated they're keen to do something then may change their mind or want something different. So we're trying to get a range of different projects in the drawer ready to go for each financial year, and one of those may or may not drop off depending on how we go with access or with construction conditions.
Now I will release you. Thank you for that. Ms. Frey, welcome. Livable Communities Councillors, page 324 to page 332. Councillor Gregory, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask on page 328, there are two things there, the support the governance review of the Patatai Reserve Board, and the one underneath it, review the consultation of public artworks, both of those not started. I was just wondering what both of those, a bit more information about both of those.
I could probably make some comments in particular relating to the Patatai Reserve Board. So we have made an offer to the people involved with that board to assist them to turn into a charitable trust, and we're really just waiting for them to take that opportunity up. It's been mooted for some time and we haven't had much headway with the existing people that sit around that table. I don't know if Heather wanted to contribute to that, but that's effectively what the current status is.
Councillor Cranston.
Thank you. Page 326, operating revenue. The Olympic pool user fees were down, but we were able to offset it by the income from MBIE for the summer camping initiative. Just wondering the relationship between money that was for a summer camping initiative being used to offset a loss in the Olympic pool.
Sorry, that's financial talk, and it was in terms of, they said, yeah, there's an up in one, down in the other, but it would not be offset. It is particular, they will have that revenue and it will go for the purposes for the summer camping institute. It just means they've got more, didn't have money in for the administration admissions, but they got some, there is some money and that wasn't in the budget as such. So apologies, it doesn't mean that we're offsetting it. It means it's just financial speaking. I will make sure that we moderate that terminology as you go through.
Thank you.
Councillor Tupara, thank you.
Just a follow on from Councillor Gregory's inquiry into the consult review around the protocols for public artworks. Why that hasn't started. We got a bit distracted because we went into Patatai kaupapa for the reserve. But I was wondering two things, why that hasn't started, but also who was the handover intended to be with? Is that folk handing to council or council handing over to some other body? Just inquiry about that.
I might have to pass this one over to James if you do have a response. Otherwise, we will come back to you.
Yeah, I understand there's actually a bit of work being undertaken behind the scenes in terms of art in public places. I'll need to come back to you as to why the comments say it's not started, and I'll get Penny to furnish a response in regards to that.
And also on who the engagement is with in terms of the handing over of that public art.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to our next one. Any more questions on this section? If not, we will move to page 333, Regional Leadership and Support Services. Is that Mr. Beatty?
You'll be treated to a smorgasbord of directors for this
Oh,
report.
smorgasbords.
So I'm not sure if we all want to move. We've got our mics here. We could deal with them on a question by question basis.
Good. Councillors, I open that section. Councillor Gregory.
Yes, I just got a question on page 338 regarding improving and strengthening the Lagoima request process. What was that? What is that about?
That's about increasing the members of my team that can assist with Lagoima responses. It's quite an onerous process, and we're looking to just strengthen the team so it's not relying on a very overworked single point.
Too overworked, single point. No, I'm joking. And the other thing that we've done is just we've had the odd tweak to the system just around how we alert people around the timeframes, because there's a 20 working day sort of cycle to a Lagoima, and if you get it on day 1 and you're not reminded at day 10 and then you're reminded at day 20, it doesn't work quite well. So we've put escalation points into Ozone, which is our system that helps us do that, and you know, just making sure that our guidelines and stuff for staff are on point as well, and any changes that come through the Office of the Ombudsman in terms of their guidelines, that they're reflected in our guidance as well.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
People and capability and recruitment and retention. I'm just wondering, we've increased the pay parity to similar to all the other councils around the country, and I'm just wondering if it's making a difference with recruitment at the moment. Are we getting a huge influx?
I wish the answer to that was yes. We are making some inroads. I think what we can take away from those changes is I think we've stemmed the flow, so to speak. But the labour market, as I'm sure you're well aware, remains really critical for the country. Local government is no different. We did have a report go through to audit and risk around our people and capability risk, which highlighted where we're sitting in respect to other like councils. Yeah, it's a very tough market at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, no more questions. We move to our last section, commercial operations, page 346 to page 349. No questions. Well, if there are no specific questions on that section, I'm going to take you right back to our recommendation, which, Councillor Pahura-Huriwai, thank you.
Sorry, it's taking a little bit to get through there. The was just in regards to the Waikanai top 10 holiday, but I don't know if this is the right space to raise it, but I just see the name there and wondered about there was an occasion when we had extreme weather events where people were not able to get back up the coast because the road was closed, and overnight they had no accommodation. Is this one of our accommodations that can be opened at short notice to help in situations like that? Or sorry if this is the wrong place to base it on.
We'll give you
that. Sure.
The chair, that is owned by our CCTO, our Gisborne Holdings Limited. And so they're operating a little at arm's length, and they are trying, so they'll be under a commercial imperative to do that. And it hasn't as such that kind of emergency housing, but under Dave, who's
Yes.
waving his hands, will be over and having the list of accommodation suppliers that can help out there.
Through your worship, yes, we do have a relationship with Waikanae Top 10 Holiday Parks. So often we'll call Jeremy up, the team will see what availability they have. We'll put people in there if they have availability for us.
Councillor Foster, thank you.
This page 44, undertake a report weekly monitoring of freshwater and coastal bathing water sites throughout the bathing water season. Not measured bathing water season begins in Q2. Are we measuring our
What page are you on?
344. And yeah, it's just, I'm just reading it as if there hasn't been any water testing for our bathing areas on both coastal and rivers, and reading that there hasn't been any testing of late, which is a bit concerning.
Ms. Noble.
So through you, your worship, so the bathing water season starts in December, so the monitoring is starting now.
Thank you.
Right, so they are being tested.
Yes, they are, but we don't have results for Q1 because the testing doesn't occur during that period of time. Because
the results before the council next week.
so the results get uploaded onto the Lawa Land and Water Aotearoa website. I can send the link round to councillors because that holds all our water quality information and also information for all the other councils in Aotearoa, New Zealand, including the bathing water info.
That would be lovely, thank you.
Yeah, because usually we do get results prior to summer with our water quality in our bathing areas, our rivers, locally, and our beaches. If that's not happening, it's a little bit concerning.
So we do have monitoring throughout the year, but there's some very specific bathing water monitoring that gets undertaken during the peak season.
Thank you for that. Well, Councillor Parata, thank you.
Sorry, just quick clarification because I couldn't follow that conversation. What is bathing water?
Swimming areas.
Swimmable areas.
Swimmable
bathing water.
Bathing water. It sounds a little bit like a bath. You were wondering when we're going to bath.
I just wasn't sure. I know up the coast what it means. I just didn't know if they apply that same definition here in town, or if there's a need to do that. We do literally bath our babies in summer in the river.
Councillor Pahuru Huriwai.
That's just how we roll when you go on tank water and you've got to go for a summer, go use bathroom down at the river summertime. But following on from Councillor Foster's question, so is that monitoring done across the coast? And just picking up on what Councillor Parata had raised around Tukumari Bay and the quality of that river for bathing in? Is that across the region? Or
So through you, there are various locations. What I will do is send you the link to the website and the specific link to the bathing contact recreation page, so you can see the sites that are monitored rather than me try and list them all now. You really need to see them on a map.
So we are monitoring water, but during the summer season, there are specific sites that are added to the monitoring. That's my understanding, Ms. Noble. Yes, so water quality are monitored, but during the swim season or the summer season, there are some swimming holes that do get extra monitoring. Councillors, I'm putting it out there, last chance, then I need someone to move this report. I do want to acknowledge staff for pulling everything together. So we will look at this 3 times a year, and then the 4th one will be at our annual report. So you won't see these big reports all the time. So only 3 times a year. I'm sure everyone's very sad and they would love a bit more reading, but thank you for the contributions you made, and thank you to staff for also pulling all the information together. Last chance, anyone wants to say anything, or is there someone willing to move this paper? Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Pahuru Huriwai. All in favour, contrary, carried. Councillors, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Rochelle Summerton and Greg Mead to Council today. We are going to open our agendas. I'll just go back because we've worked all around that today. So you know there are a bit of information. So I take you to page 118. And part of that is the attachment with the fees that the previous council discussed. Then there are copies in this report. Councillor Robinson, please take a seat. Thank you. Then you can see all the submissions added to this paper. And what I'm going to do now is how we run a hearings process. So I will give opportunity. Greg, are you going to join Rochelle? We can get 2 seats up here if you also want to talk to us. Please come here, councillors. What we're going to do is give Greg and Rochelle the opportunity to speak to their submission that they have made. Rochelle's submission is an extensive submission on page 204 of 394. Welcome, how are you? Haven't seen you in a long time. Take a seat. Please make yourself at home. We'll leave your microphone on. And what we're going to do is give you 5 to 10 minutes just to speak. So council, all submissions are taken as read. And then what we will do today, once you've made your submission, people might ask questions of clarification. This is not a debate. This is only asking of our submitters questions of clarifications. And then this will be discussed next week at our formal council meeting. The floor is yours. Relax. We are all ears. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for allowing Comet to come here today to discuss the fees and charges for Kiwa pools. I'm Rochelle Summerton, General Manager of Comet Swimming Club. Comet has been established in Gisborne since 1958. We are now teaching the 3rd generation of swimmers in Gisborne. This is a wonderful achievement and something that we are really proud of. We're making an impact to the water safety and the health and well-being of our community. Swimming is the foundation of aquatic sports. Learning to swim is essential to encouraging a lifetime of aquatic activities. Some of you may have heard and been aware that the week of the 21st to the 27th of November was Swim Safe Week in New Zealand. It raised an important topic of the cost of swimming lessons in New Zealand and the cost of fees being beyond the reach of many whānau. The actual statistic is 52% of all New Zealand children are not learning to swim due to the cost. 52%. That's over half of our tamariki. The average swimming lesson in New Zealand costs $20. In 2021, Comet raised our fees for the first time in 7 years to $13 per lesson. Comet's a not-for-profit organisation, and that's reflected in the fees that we charge for our community. Comet's focus is on bringing the health and well-being to our community whilst providing quality learn to swim and water safety lessons. We are hopeful that the new fees and charges at Kiwa pools will be encouraging to keep swimmers swimming longer, all year round and into adulthood. A 233% increase is rather scary and not on par with other low socioeconomic areas of New Zealand. The reality is that museums, libraries, parks and pools do not make money. However, if we find the right mix, we can lessen the financial impact on ratepayers and the fees for swimmers. As a not-for-profit organisation, Comet do not have to make money, but we do need to stay in the black to be a successful and thriving club. We pay our staff above the living wage and believe that swim coaching and instructing is a successful and rewarding career. We provide training and professional development so that a career in aquatics is an attractive option for our local people. Giving our residents the opportunity to become qualified instructors is doable here. I'm a qualified OSWIM assessor, Swimming New Zealand evidence gatherer, and can guide potential employees through this process, giving them the opportunity for a rewarding career in aquatics. You will see in our submission that we would like council to reinstate annual passes, looking after the everyday year-round swimmers. The annual pass doesn't overly affect us. However, we would like to advocate for the wider community. Comet would like lane charges to be realistic and not a 233% increase. Comet also encouraged that the charge for club swimmers be removed at the door. This is double dipping, charging for lane hireage and a charge on top for swimmers to enter. Many of our swimmers enter twice a day, so it ends up costing quite a lot. The new pool in Hawke's Bay, as well as Whakatane and Whanganui, to mention a few, do not charge swimmers twice. Swimmers can show their club card as they enter when they are taking part in swimming lessons. When they come for recreational swimming, normal door charges should apply. There should not be a charge for spectators. Having parents and caregivers come to the pool means that there's another set of eyes on their tamariki, and it's helpful for managing behaviour, thus reducing the pressure on lifeguards. A charge for spectators for club swimmers, including recreational swimmers, encourages a drop-off at the door and increases pressure on lifeguards and pool staff. Streamlining the current way council invoice with possible quarter charges rather than monthly billing is something that we would like to investigate with council. We would like to discuss the different options, looking at COMA as a whole and not separating out the learn to swim if we are successful in this tender. COMA are keen to be involved in the learn to swim process. However, this is outside the area of discussion for today. We would like to discuss this further with council and Kiwa Pools management. Clarification around the fees for Swim for Life Tairawhiti is needed, as it was unclear in the fees and charges document what this would be. Swim for Life was set up in 2015 and caters for years 0 to 6 of all primary schools in Tairawhiti, right up to Ririkohu and Te Araroa and down as far as Muriwai and up to Matawai. So it's a really wide span. Comet Swimming Club and Martin Swim School have been delivering these lessons, which are 10 lessons per year to each student, to 3,000 children. Our aim is to reduce barriers to get more of our tamariki learning how to swim. We are very excited, as you can understand, that swimming under the tent will soon be a thing of the past. Comet look forward to working together to find the right mix for our community and would like to be involved in more conversations around this. Comet have worked together with council and the Olympic pools for many, many years, and we look forward to the next stage of development. Comet produced a comprehensive proposal in November 2021 with different scenarios to start the discussion and provided valuable information to council to help with the fee structure. We would love to discuss this more and look forward to being involved in the pricing to help find the perfect mix for Tairawhiti. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, it's been very thorough. Councillor Gregory.
Thank you. Just around the spectators, at the moment, how many spectators would you have coming to Comet swim sessions, and do they not pay at the moment?
They don't pay at the moment. There is actually a sign on the thing that says there's a spectator fee, but it's not charged.
Okay.
So that would be mostly parents that come and sit when their kids have their lessons.
And how many spectators do you normally have?
Well, it's been very different since COVID, but so prior to that, especially the older group, the older kids, not many parents, 5. The younger groups, a lot. Well, you know, maybe 1 per swimmer or 1 per family. Yeah,
thanks.
Any other questions of clarification that's not covered in the written submission as well as the verbal submission? Councillor Robinson, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, your materials, and that was really interesting to learn about the comprehensive report provided in November 2021. And thank you for your invitation to engage with council to find a fee structure resolution. If council was to implement the proposed option B, which you've discussed about 233% increase in some fees, et cetera, can you realistically tell us how Comet thinks it would impact on its business model? Because in my mind, if the fee structure was such that Comet's business model was unsustainable, the loss to the community of that inherent knowledge and talent and teaching ability is irreplaceable. So in your mind, you must have run through the scenario. What do you think honestly would happen to Comet and the services you provide, being able to retain staff and all the resources in the event this fee structure, the proposed fee structure was implemented?
I would hope to make it work if that was the only scenario, but it would definitely involve an increase to our participants and their prices, which we don't want to do. We want more swimmers to be swimming. A staged increase over years would be much easier, especially if Comet was successful in the Learn to Swim. We feel that it would provide a really clear pathway for our swimmers to carry on swimming. It would be easier. At the moment, they're at 2 pools, so they go from one pool, and the move to the other pool is quite scary. They stop swimming. They think they can swim well, but they haven't actually swum in deep water. We feel that if we had the rights of the Learn to Swim, they would see that pathway. They can see them there. We can do some deep water work with them during the term. We believe that membership would increase a lot over that time, which would obviously be good. And that would allow us to maybe hit that top tier in time. But to start with, it would be very, very difficult. We would need outside funding, which we do not have at present, and funding is sometimes very few and far between, especially with COVID at the moment.
Councillor Foster, Councillor Parata, thank you.
Thank you. Have you worked out, I mean, you're saying your fees at the moment are $13 per child, and you've increased it, and the national average is $20. Have you worked out if option B was looked at and approved, what would your charge have to be? What would the increase from $13 have to be to cover your costs?
We'd have to know a few things, like if there's the charge at the door for swimmers to get in as well, that charge at the door at present, because there is one, is when I first started it was 64 cents. Now it's $2, close to $2.50 per swim. So we have to offset that price against the fees that we charge whānau, because that can $2.50 per swim, that can sometimes be $5 a day, which can, it adds up to a lot. So we'd have to do our numbers, but it would be an increase, and we don't want to have to increase the fees. We want whānau to be able to afford to get their kids and themselves to learn how to swim.
Even though the pool upgrade will be far superior than what you've got now.
It will be far superior, but we have managed for a very long time to keep that pool thriving. Without Comet, it would have been a very dire place to go.
Councillor Parata, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to say that I am also a product of Comet. We used to come from Ruatoria to Gisborne twice a week for many years, and many of the students of Comet at the time have gone on to do surf lifesaving. It's actually had to use those skills. I just wanted to understand that with the price rise of $13, have you already seen an impact of that on whānau with students coming through to take swimming lessons? Is there already an impact there?
We just went from $12 to $13, and we did give a lot of warning for it. But what we're noticing is that the third or the fourth child in the family, parents can't afford that. So that, the older kids learn to swim, and then I guess they're hopeful that one day they'll be able to afford it. Often we will just add them for free as well. I have many family that have the fourth kid and we just can't afford it, and I'm like, never mind, just put them in. We want them to swim. We do that across the board for anyone with hardship, but not many people are brave enough to come out and say they have hardship, so we can't always help.
Councillor Ria, thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you for your submission today. My comment is more just for us as the council, is that though the capacity of the pool has increased, the facility has become greater, the capacity of our community to pay for that has not grown. So even though we have a more beautiful, more more facilities, all of that for the pool. We must remember that that hasn't actually occurred for our families that are going to utilize that pool. I think we should really consider that.
Thank
Kia
you for
ora.
that, and that's what we will discuss next week. So for now, any other questions from our two lovely submitters? Last question, Councillor Cranston. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sure I absolutely understand the benefits of Learn to Swim, but I'm sure you understand our challenges. We've got to have a $2.5 million bill to pay every year. And the element of user pays has to be a solid consideration of that. When we look at affordability, if it's not coming through user pays, it's going to come through ratepayers, which could be impacting on the affordability another way. So what do you think about the affordability being on the users rather than the ratepayers that are possibly non-users?
We would hope that the new complex will bring more ratepayers to the pool. Yeah, that's across the board. Not all of our ratepayers pay, go to the library. They don't all go to the parks. They don't all go to the pool. It is a reality that charges may go up across the board to everyone. But if you think about how it's impacting upon the health and well-being and bringing just a lifetime of aquatic joy to people, I think a little increased ratepayers is fine. But we're really happy to talk about how to make it work. What I would not like to see is if the Learn to Swim was given to an outside provider, that money then goes straight out of town as well. They will probably charge higher fees, possibly, because $13 is pretty low. As I said, we are not for profit, so we don't actually have to make heaps of money. We just need to stay in the black. So I think our people would pay a little bit more. We have many swimmers that say, yes, we'll pay more, and we will hopefully be able to tap into some funding for it to make it. We want to find the right mix that works for council, that works for ratepayers, that works for our community.
Thank you for your constructive submission to us today, and also thank you for taking the time to really look into all the detail and also your invitation to work closely with us. Much appreciated, and thank you for your time here with us today as well. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
And this will be discussed next Thursday.
Cool.
Okay. And thank you.
Before they go, and I know when Rochelle did her speech, she said that the Learn to Swim program was not as part of the discussion. I've read everything, Madam Chair. I'm still mystified as to what the funding model around the Learn to Swim is. And if I'm mystified, having read everything, I'm sure at least one or two other people around here might be. Can we not have some experience explanation?
Point of order. I'm just saying goodbye to our guests now. That is part of a discussion that that staff will pull together, that we will have with all the information, as well as the written submissions and verbal submissions, extra information on the Learn to Swim financing, which we will then take into consideration next week when we have that debate. Goodbye.
I just thought there might have been something they could add to our discussion.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors.
No worries.
I'm
Thank
available
you.
for any questions if you have any.
Good. Thanks a lot. Well, we are obviously the A team, because I was thinking we're going to take a very long time to get through stuff, and we're going to break very soon. We're just going to go into public excluded. What I'm going to ask is that everyone take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back. Thank you to the Gisborne Herald for being here with us today, and then we will take it from there. Oh, no, before anyone goes anywhere, I'm just going to take you to page, it's just noting. So I want to take you to page 118. Councillor Tibble, we're just going to move a paper. This was just for us receiving our submitters here today, listening to them, moved by Councillor Wharenga, seconded by Councillor Tibble, all in favour, contrary, carried. And this brings us to the end of our open agenda. Quick 5-minute wharipaku / coffee break. and then we will move into public excluded, grab lunch, slide into our next meetings. How does that sound?